For over 100 years, many personal finance authors have been screaming at us to avoid 7 habits that keep people poor. I've seen people with extremely high income fail to build meaningful wealth. And then people on very modest means who really figure out and win the game of wealth. And more importantly, they're able to build wealth that fulfills their purpose in life. We are going to cover 100 years of expertise around the right money-building wealth habits and avoiding the wrong ones in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the channel. This is the Zacc Call Money Education channel. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. We are constantly throwing out great content between giving you a weekly reminder to have your very best financial year. And in addition to that, we go through the Guided Path series, which teaches all about different topics from start to finish. And then we do one-off videos like this one, where we are going to hit a very specific topic in depth and really cover it well for you. My name is Zacc Call. I'm the president of Capita Financial Network. And today I'm here with Avery Jackson. Avery is our advisor operations coordinator. This is a role we created because there is so much going on at our business, and we needed someone who really had a knack for efficiency, project management, and a passion around money. Avery, before we begin, I want to ask you one question. The reason that I hired you was specifically because there was this gift here that I don't see often. You have the ability to communicate with people, and yet you are extremely passionate about two things that are more like mathematical. And those things are where money and efficiency are combined. So I want to hear why. Why are you so passionate about money and efficiency?
First things first, I think being a woman in this industry, it's super important for there to be just as much female representation as male. And so that's one thing that I'm a big advocate for. And then number two, there's something when I change a process or create a new file, it's like a firework goes off in my brain. And I love seeing all the departments at Capita function well together and be able to bounce ideas. And I just think it makes Capita the best version of itself.
Perfect. And Todd calls you the Swiss Army knife because
Yes.
we still haven't figured out exactly what job you're going to be doing long term, but so far we just keep giving you more and more.
Yes, it's the best. I love it.
Perfect. Okay, so let's dive into this. But before we do, of course, remember Capita Financial Network is a wealth management company. If you're trying to figure out who we are, you need to go to capitafinancialnetwork.com. What we're going to talk about today isn't necessarily advice for you. It is education-based. It is knowledge. And ideally, it makes your life a lot better. So I'm going to hit all 7 habits very quickly, and that way you know what we're talking about, and you can come back if you have to and get all the rest. And then we will dive in very, very well into each topic and give you examples and insights. Here they are. Number 1 is spending to be seen. This prevents wealth creation. Number 2, drifting without a destination, and this prevents direction. Number 3, fear-based decision-making. This prevents action. Number 4, optimizing the wrong levers. This prevents progress. Number 5, avoiding ownership. This prevents compounding. When I say ownership here, we're not talking about like, am I personally owning my own destiny? We're talking about literally owning investments, like owning things. That prevents compounding. Okay, number 6, excuse-based thinking. This prevents growth. And then finally, number 7, lack of systems. This prevents consistency. So how did we get to these 7? I'm going to lay out the methodology, then we will break down each one so you can understand how to be better. So we took 5 books. These are authors over 100 years. So the Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. This book, I have loved this book. It is written almost like scripture, oddly enough, in the way that it tells stories and talks about things. And it is so insightful. And I have been blown away at how applicable it still is today, 100 years later. But these are authors from entirely different decades, different eras. They're 5 books, and we pulled out the 3 major. Now, these talk about positive things too. Most of it is actually in all 5 books about what to do with your money. But in each of the books, the author talks about mistakes and bad habits as well. So we pulled out the top 3 teachings of the worst mistakes or poor habits that you can make or have. And that would give you 15, right? 5 times 3, you've got 15. And I very specifically picked these books. This is my own opinion, but these are my favorite books within the personal finance space on this particular topic. Okay, so that's 15. But there was enough overlap across those 15 that 8 are repeated enough that it takes it down into 7. So really there are 7 really, let's call them habits or core things that you're doing that prevent you from building wealth. And it's not just, these aren't my ideas. These are these authors' ideas, and I really hope to represent them well. These are very smart and influential people, but I was surprised to see how much overlap there was, taking it from 15 down to 7. All right, so as we dive in, what would you add to this, Avery? And do you have any questions or thoughts before we get into the very first topic?
I just want to re-emphasize that since we did take it down to 7, this just proves if we have multiple people reiterating the same thing, how important they are and how they really can change your wealth.
Right. Okay, quick introduction. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He talks about why people don't act. All right, The Richest Man in Babylon. This is George Clason. He talks about why money doesn't accumulate. And then Morgan Housel, Psychology of Money. He's written several books. He's a more modern author. I met him once at a conference, and this is before this book came out. And I remember thinking, this guy's really smart. And I didn't realize how smart he was until later I read his book. But his is why I think this is why progress collapses, is a lot of what he teaches. Ramit Sethi. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Forgive me if not, but this is why good intentions don't stick. And then Stanley and Danko, The Millionaire Next Door. This is why income doesn't become wealth. The story behind this one was really interesting. At the very beginning of the book, they talk about they brought in a bunch of millionaires to survey them and get questions answered about how did you do it? And it's an older book. So a lot of people will say, well, being a millionaire isn't a big deal. At the time this book was written, it absolutely was. They brought in all these people, and they thought because they were millionaires, they would have to do like all this fancy like hors d'oeuvres and really fancy meals. And they brought all these people in, and the people didn't know what to do with the food. Like they didn't understand what they were eating. They didn't know how to like serve it exactly to themselves in the buffet style. And they realized right in that moment, the people who had made good money or at least created great wealth oftentimes were not the people who spent a lot of money. Right,
because it's not just your salary. The money in doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be wealthy in the future.
Right. So as we go, I'm going to credit these authors as much as possible. Let's talk about number 1, and it goes right in line with what we were just saying with The Millionaire Next Door, that they had amassed wealth, but they weren't necessarily high spenders of wealth. And that's the first one, spending to be seen, and this prevents wealth. So Morgan Housel talks about this, and in particular, it's interesting because wealth is what you don't see, not what you see.
Totally.
But yet everyone assumes that people who spend a lot of money must have a lot of money. And that's not the case.
Totally. Like some real life examples, high car payment, but not saving any money, or significantly changing your lifestyle when your income increases. Things like that are going to prevent you from having a wealthy, successful future.
Right. This is a personal example for me. So I moved in 2021. We built a home, and we built it big enough that because our kids were getting to become teenagers, we wanted a space for the teenagers to come, and it's worked. I think I had like 3 or 4 teenagers sleeping at my house 2 nights ago.
I love it.
It totally worked. That was the strategy, and it's been great. But it's a bigger house than what we had before, and it's nicer than what we had before. So I was surprised at how many people reached out to me to get financial advice after I made my financial situation worse. I mean, it's
totally.
I did it smart, within reason, managed the new home purchase well, so it was easily covered, and make sure that the finances worked. But technically, had I not done it, I could have created and saved more in overall wealth. Now, there's a balance between priorities in life and having the teenagers around, and that was more important to me than than the money. But the point I'm trying to make is mathematically, I would have less money because I bought this house. And yet I had way more people come to me and be like, you must know something about money.
Totally. I think social media plays a part into that too. You see people posting about all the things that they have, and you immediately think, oh, they must be extremely wealthy if they have anything and everything they could ever imagine. And so just remembering in the back of your mind that wealth isn't always what we post or what we put out there or what we buy, but more so things that you can't see.
Right. Morgan Housel talks about it in his book, The Psychology of Money. I'm going to keep pulling these up over and over again here. He talks about the goalpost moving. It's like you know the game you're playing, and then all of a sudden you get more income and you push that goalpost further out, which makes it so that you have to save more for retirement to be able to be ready for retirement because now your lifestyle is based on a higher dollar amount. You have a higher expense. Maybe you have more debt because you've borrowed for homes or cars or whatever it may be. So constantly moving that goalpost makes it so your goal, your actual literal goal in life financially becomes harder and harder to achieve. So that's Morgan Housel. We talked about Stanley and Danko and how they talked about the difference between creating wealth and spending wealth. And then George Clason, that one is The Richest Man in Babylon. And he talks about it in a little bit different way. His big thing, like he's credited with the pay yourself first concept.
Totally.
So he's the one that basically taught early on as possible of everything you make, do not wait to save what is left over. Save at the very front end and then spend what is left over, which works. It's the only way to make it work. But that's, if you don't pay yourself first, you will spend. You were saying earlier, your dad taught you something young. What was that?
Yes, this takes us right into number 2, actually. So drifting without a destination, this prevents direction. My dad, from a super young age, probably 9 by the time I knew what a dollar was, he told us that if you don't tell your money where to go, it's going to leave you anyway. Meaning that if money just sits in our bank account, we're going to spend it anyway. So one thing that my husband and I have actually started to do is we set up auto transfers. So we don't even see the money that goes into our savings or our Roths or whatever accounts we want it to go to. And that way it's not tempting to spend the money.
Right. There's your pay yourself first concept that
Exactly.
you guys do. Have you and Ethan talked about like your money purpose, like how you define, so Sethi calls it how you define a rich life. He's in the I Will Teach You to Be Rich book. He talks about how do you define a rich life. Have you guys talked about that?
Yeah, we've talked about it, and not so much from like a monetary perspective, but goals for our future, where we want to be career-wise or with a family and things like that. As far as monetary comes, we have goals we want to hit at certain ages, and we're able to do that because of...
You guys have numbers you want to hit at certain ages?
Yes.
That's better than pretty much everyone out there.
I know.
No one
I give
knows
credit
these
to
things.
him.
Oh, is that right?
Totally. But...
so I call this money purpose. Napoleon Hill talks about that. Basically, if you, and that's in I Will Think and Grow Rich, is Napoleon Hill. He talks about how people rarely build wealth without a definite purpose. Like, what is the why behind the wealth? Just trying to become wealthy doesn't necessarily, it can happen, but it doesn't usually. Like, you have to have a very clear purpose. For me, the reasons for having wealth are safety. I've been through enough cancer or other issues that I'm not insurable from a life insurance standpoint. So to me, building wealth as fast as I can is what provides my wife and kids the safety net if something were to happen.
Totally.
So for me, it's safety for my spouse and my family. It's also safety for, I can't tell you how many times I've thought, wow, that's expensive to fix that car, or that's expensive to fix that thing at the house, or my goodness, the kids' activities are expensive. To me, creating wealth is so that I don't have to worry about that stuff. And my wife and I joke about this as well because she kept buying me really nice sunglasses, like the Maui Jim sunglasses.
You lose them.
I lose them.
So you have to get Amazon.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I've done 2 things. 1, I've determined I will buy cheap sunglasses and lose those and not feel bad about it. But 2, I've also, like, earning a lot of money for me is so that I don't feel bad about losing the things that I lose.
Exactly.
That's a weird money purpose, but that's a little like small. The primary one for me is security and growth and future options and creating optionality for life choices.
Totally. I also think, too, when you don't have financial goals, your spending becomes emotional. I think more and more we see that people spend to feel more successful or happier or less stressed, like you hear retail therapy. And I think that's a real thing. If you don't have financial goals, your money just leaves and you're like, where did all of my paycheck go that I just got last week?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important.
Let's expand that a bit because I love that topic of money and stress because you just hit on the concept of retail therapy, like the spending to relieve stress. I feel like that's like a masking stress.
Totally.
But money literally can reduce, like legitimately reduce stress. If you have an emergency fund where if the washer or dryer goes out, you know you can buy one without having to put it on a credit card that you can't pay off. Like you know it's just sitting there. That's a certain level of freedom that is huge. And for me, like that's what I mean by safety and protection and money purpose. So yes, you can mask your stress with money, and that's probably not going to be a good way, or you can help eliminate stress with wealth, and that might be your money purpose, is to reduce stress in your life.
Totally.
Okay, before we move on to number 3, anything about the destination. So the concept is drifting without a destination. The 2 authors that hit it the most are Napoleon Hill and Ramit Sethi. Anything else?
I would just say you hear a lot of people say they're going to save more money when they make more money, but you need to have a timeline. You need to have where you want the money to go directionally, what accounts, what targets you want to save. Because if you have no net worth target and no timeline, you probably aren't going to end up where you want to be in the future.
Perfect. Okay, tell us about habit number 3.
Okay, habit number 3, fear-based decision-making prevents action. This is a hard one for me because I think sometimes I fear change and I fear taking action.
You're saying that you sometimes get paralyzed by fear. This is surprising to me because you take action so quickly. You come up with a solution, you think it's the right way to go, you make recommendations, you move forward, and it seems like you're very action-oriented. And you're telling me sometimes you feel fear enough to feel paralyzed?
Yes, I think change for me is the big thing. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to me, and change kind of instills this uncomfortable feeling inside of you. But one thing that I've had to work through is fear is going to leave you in the same place. If you don't take action and move forward, you're going to be in the same space.
Yeah, you'll be no better off.
Exactly.
You'll be no better off. Napoleon Hill talks a lot about it in Think and Grow Rich. And this book was difficult a bit for me because he basically makes it sound like you just need to tell yourself this is what's going to happen to you in the future, all the good things that are going to happen to you in the future, and they just will. And It's like the exact opposite of the fear-based decision-making person, right? And he gives a lot of examples as to like situations where people said, I'm going to have this much money in my bank account on this day, and that like personal manifestation of it and how it comes to be true. And I think there's some truth to this because once you really commit to this is what's going to happen, your mind starts to find ways to resolve it. And that's actually one of the main things that he talks about is once you commit to a positive, hopeful, like confident future, your mind automatically and even in your subconscious starts to work through solutions and pathways towards it. And I actually think this is our founder, his name is Mike Littledyke. If I could like basically write a book about Mike Littledyke, I would just be like, Napoleon Hill, he already did it. Like this guy, he just envisions the future. He expects it to happen. He knows it will happen. And he has like zero fear of it not happening. And then he just starts to take the action towards it happening. So the bottom line is if you find yourself in a fear-based decision-making mindset, and it will prevent you from action. You've got to find a way. And maybe it's associated, like find the person in your life. Mike changed my thought processes. He changed the way I approach risk. Now, we are very cautious about risk. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that YouTube thing. That sounds scary. That's the kind of risk that I'm talking about. Not like investment risk and other risk, but like risk of failure, risk of trying something and it not working out. He eliminated all of that. And
risk of starting a business. He started Capita, and here we are.
I wouldn't be here if he hadn't. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say 60 employees later, and he created this all for us. So
Right.
it's amazing.
Right. And of course, we need execution people. We need people like you who can think through processes and organize it and make it happen. But to the item number 3 is fear-based decision making. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, that's me. How do I fix this? In my mind, you've got 2 options. You can either read books like this and try to rewire your brain. Well, I'm going to give you 3 options. Option number 2, you can find someone like Mike and like I did, and just sit there and observe and then realize like, oh, he's right. He's right. It keeps working. Like he keeps having the confidence and it keeps working. So that's option 2. Option 3 is therapy. Like that's really what those are the options you have. Self-therapy, watch someone do it, or go to therapy. And none of those options are bad. All 3 could work very well, and maybe you should try all 3, but fear-based decision-making will prevent action. And Morgan Housel talks about this as well. In The Psychology of Money, he talks about fear. A lot of people invest too conservatively because they are so worried about the loss. In fact, they do studies that show that the emotional impact of a 10% loss on investments is so much more profound than the emotional impact of a 10% gain.
Mm-hmm.
It is not one for one. People feel the loss so much deeper. And the irony or the difficulty about that is that most investments that are diversified and that are appropriately built have gone up over time. That's not all. I can't say that every investment will always work out for you. But what I'm saying is well-built portfolios, managed well over a long time, have done well long-term in the past. Therefore, the downs have been temporary, and yet we feel them worse.
Yeah, one thing piggybacking off of that is I feel in this industry, we hear a lot of people hesitating to put their money in the market because they want to wait for, maybe they want to buy it the dip or something, and they're waiting for that perfect time to buy their stock. And I got my degree from BYU, and I had a professor, his name was Professor Brow, and his saying that he said over and over and over again in our intro to finance class was time in the market is better than timing the market. And I think that's so true. Getting your money in the market, growing and compounding is the best way to grow your wealth instead of maybe sitting in a high yield savings account.
Perfect. So this is fear-based decision making. You're saying sitting in a high yield savings account, earning reasonable rates today, but not crazy good, is what's preventing some people from really building wealth.
Totally.
They're not taking on the risk of ownership, which we're actually going to hit in number 5 as well. So let's hit 4, and then I'll give you another example. Remind me, and for those of you guys listening here, I'll give you an exact example of people who wanted me to set exact price targets to enter the market, and then what happened. So little teaser there for about 2 minutes away from now. Optimizing the wrong levers prevents progress. This one is so important. When I first got into this industry, it seemed like all the talk was, oh, you shouldn't go to get that latte. That's going to save your finances.
Cut the small expenses. Save
Yes.
the $5 a day.
Go through every single line item of the budget. That's what's really going to help you. So in I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Sethi, he talks about how they're optimizing the wrong thing. And I get this. I mean, this makes sense. It's easy to see. Let's talk about that latte, for example. Even if you're spending $7 to $10, which a lot of our customers are going to be like, are you kidding me? People spend $7 to $10 on a latte. They do. But I'll tell you what, no one those same people who are like, I got to stop doing that. I got to stop spending on this latte might also have a $5,000 to $1,500 a month car payment. Not 5,000, sorry, 500.
Yes.
$500 to $1,500 a month car payment. That's a lot of lattes. If you were to go and maybe put more down on the car, if you were to buy a less expensive car and your car payment was $200, $300, $400 a month instead of $1,000, that is so many lattes. You can't make that up. That'd be way too much caffeine. So the point is obsessing over these small expenses and not hitting the big ones. So the big ones: your home, your car, your taxes, your healthcare. If you can be really clear about how much those 4 things cost you, you'll know your overall spending behavior pretty well. And if those 4 things are an extremely small percentage of your budget, then congratulations. Like you make a lot of money or you've managed your money really well. But let's go through them. You can't really control your taxes that much. You can minimize them, but if you minimize them too far, you end up in jail. So let's avoid that one. And then healthcare, you find the best plan that matches your family's needs at the lowest cost possible. Maybe it's through an employer, maybe it's on the private exchange, maybe you're getting a subsidy. All of that, you just try to optimize that the best you can. But between taxes and healthcare, there's only so much you can do. Your car and your home. These are the levers when it comes to spending that you really have a lot of control over. For some people who have a lot of assets, rental properties, primary residence, a lot of equipment, business owners, vehicles, maybe we throw in property and casualty insurance on top of that and insurance costs because those things go pretty high for those unique individuals. But for most people, it's those 4. You can do a lot about 2 of them, car and home. You can't do that much once you've optimized taxes and healthcare. But optimizing the wrong levers is you're going to spend a lot of time and not make a lot of progress. You're going to stress about it. You're going to feel bad about it. You're going to tell yourself you're terrible, and you're just looking at the wrong numbers.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say like they're doing everything right and they're just bad at money, but that's not true. I think in a lot of people's cases, they are just pulling the wrong levers and they're cutting their small expenses and obsessing over tiny little details. And can I save 50 cents here and 50 cents here? Whereas maybe they should think about increasing their income or building skills, investing, taking ownership, trying to minimize your car payment, things like that will actually build wealth over time.
So in the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, there's several characters and there's one guy that's like figured out money. And he's teaching these other people all the lessons that he's learned about money in particular. And he talks about creating a surplus on purpose. Like you have to think about your finances in a way where I'm creating this income and then I'm using this much of it to either create more income or spend or create the right life. But you have to do it by design. You have to create a surplus by design. That is the lever that George Clason teaches you to pull. And then Sethi is telling us, don't worry about the tiny ones, figure out the big ones. The four I gave you are the 4 I've taught. That's not these guys in particular.
Totally.
But those are just from our experience when we watch people's budget. It's those 4 that drive the large bulk or large percentage, especially of retirees and near retirees overall spending. All right, let's go through number 5. So avoiding ownership. And the reason that this is so important is everyone talks about the wonders of compounding interest and how it works, right? And how you start early in it and then you're making money and you're making money on your money. And going back to The Richest Man in Babylon, it talks about these guys that start to make they call it gold because it's the currency of the time. Mm-hmm. But they don't put their gold to work. And he actually talks about the children of your efforts, the gold, having children, and then the children having children in terms of like wealth creation and compounding. Totally. And if you take your gold and you place it in your purse and you don't do anything with it, it can't create additional gold for you. And then your additional gold that you didn't get can't create more gold for you. And this effect of not compounding is so profound on a financial situation. There have been many times where I've seen a client come to us after many years and they're thinking, I keep trying to save, and they're putting it in a bank account and they're not making any money on it. And then their neighbor has 2 or 3 or 4 times as much money, having saved the same amounts because they're willing to take the risk. We talked about that in item number 3, fear-based decisions, but then actually owning. Okay, so that example. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody say what you talked about, like, hey, when the market's down a little bit, I'll buy in. I'm too nervous about this. So there's 2 things happening: fear-based decision making and lack of ownership. Number 3 and number 5. Mm-hmm. And they'll give me a target. They say, when the S&P 500 hits this line, then I'll buy, because I just feel like it's too expensive right now. The market hangs out near all-time highs a lot. It bounces around it and comes down, but then it hits a new all-time high and bounces around it. And yes, do we have corrections and recessions and all of that in between? Absolutely. But we spend a lot of time hitting new highs and regular.
Totally.
And they come in strings too. So I had several people, this is probably about 8 years ago now. I have to think about the time, but they said, when the S&P 500 drops to 2,500 or 2,300, 2,200, I'm going to take this $100,000 and buy it. So I set some price triggers and actually put it in our system and said, hey, when the S&P 500 hits 2,400, send me a text, an email to all these email accounts and my phone number. And then in the text, I had a pretty cool system to be able to do this. It would say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm making up names, want to buy $100,000 worth of the stock portfolio they have when the S&P hits this level. And I went in there 3 or 4 years later, and the S&P 500 was at like 5,000, and we never hit the triggers, and they never got the call from me. I mean, we talked regularly, right? But I never pressed them hard on like
time to invest.
Exactly, because I tried to respect their feelings around it, but they never got that opportunity, and they would have been better just buying it at 3,000 at the time, not waiting for it to drop to 2,500, 2,400.
Yeah.
So avoiding ownership prevents compounding. What would you add to this, Avery?
I hear people say that they aren't going to invest because it feels complicated, or they're scared of owning stocks, or they're scared of the risk. But that's exactly what we do here at Capita Financial Network. And we're happy to talk to anyone who is willing and help you with your wealth goals and your financial goals, and help you get into the market and start building some wealth and having your money compound.
Yeah. I mean, we teach people how to do it through YouTube. We teach people how to do it for free that way.
Yep.
But yes, of course, that is our core business, where we can help people ensure that they meet their goals and find a certain peace of mind that comes with financial security and wealth creation. But you have to own things, which means you have to get over the fear-based decision-making and optimize the right levers. All right, we're going to move on to 6. Thanks for the plug there, of course.
Okay, number 6.
Avery's not a financial advisor. She's on our operations team, but hey, we'll take it. Okay, number 6, excuse-based thinking prevents growth. You want to add anything? You want to start us off here?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say you didn't grow up learning this, or you weren't, maybe people don't have my dad to teach them about money from a super young age. But sometimes it's just a mindset shift. I think people say, oh, it's too late. But really, you should be asking yourself, what's the best next step from here? Or instead of I'm bad with money, what system would make this easier? To me, I think excuses reduce the fear of failure, and they justify staying in your comfort zone.
Oh, for sure. You just hit what Napoleon Hill teaches. He basically says poverty is mentally justified before financially exposed.
Totally.
And I don't mean to be harsh towards anybody in any financial situation. I want to be ultra sensitive because everybody comes from a different situation. But he in particular is basically saying, like, you've got to fix your mind, and then you're going to get there.
And that ties to the whole manifesting thing that we talked about with Mike.
That's right.
A lot of it's mental before you even get to the point of it being your reality.
Right. That's right. Okay, Morgan Housel, he talks a lot about this very mathematical mind, very, very smart thinker. It's interesting. He's taken a very analytical approach to the psychology. And so normally you wouldn't necessarily pair those things together. And he talks about how many of us will experience the randomness of life, because there's good, there's bad, right? In many different aspects of life, whether it be health, financial decisions, markets that you happen to retire into or have when you're growing your wealth. I mean, there are so many external factors, and there is so much randomness that happens in life. And many people will misinterpret randomness as bad luck. And they assume, oh, that's just me. I can't tell you how many times I have had clients where they will go to invest, right? And they oftentimes will invest, but they'll say, just watch. Market's going to drop now. As soon as I put my dollars in, they've been going up great, but as soon as I buy, they're going to drop. Well, the problem is that they only look at the markets for the next 3 weeks because they invested, And the market is always
Up and
going up
down.
and down. So they get these little confirmation biases that say, yep, see, it went down on Thursday. I knew it.
But then it's back up on Friday.
Exactly. And it was going to do that either way. And there's a
Totally.
randomness to it all. And they just wouldn't have noticed or looked had they not invested. So
Totally.
there is this misinterpretation of randomness. That's one of the ways that Morgan Housel talks about excuse-based thinking. And then Napoleon Hill, he just, Think and Grow Rich, he just hits it hard. He's like, this is your mental problem. You've got to fix that, and then you can be rich. And anybody can do it, and anybody can have it, but you have to change that mentality first.
Totally.
That's great. Okay, number 7, lack of systems. I feel like this is right up your alley. This is your thing. Like, I feel like whenever we're sitting here trying to figure out how to make something happen at our company, you're like, oh, well, why don't we just set it up in this way, in this system, and then we won't have to think about it again because it'll just do it automatically. Does that sound about right?
Sounds right.
Okay. What would you add to about your belief around systems and how they provide consistency and how the lack of systems prevents consistency?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is Atomic Habits. I know that you and I talk about this book a lot. And James Clear says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And that's so true. If you're just relying on pure willpower when it comes to investing and saving, and you're only investing when you remember, you're going to fall short. I mean, we have so many things going on in our lives that the investing should be it should just happen automatically.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to make that decision regularly.
Exactly. And so back to what Ethan and I do is the auto transfer things. We have a system set up that automatically hits whenever we get paid or whatever, and we never see the money, and it's done before we even have to think about it.
I am amazed at people who are at the end of the month, they're like, yeah, I do a little manual transfer over to my investment account because I find that if I have $500 or $1,000 or $5,000, I'll save what I can. I just think, how? That would never work for me.
No.
I have to take it out very first.
Totally.
Or else it doesn't happen. Not only that, life gets busy, so I would just forget to do it.
Totally.
Ramit Sethi, he emphasizes automation over willpower in I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He talks about the system will outperform your good intentions every time. And I believe that. I totally believe that. Because I've had plenty of times where I had great intentions and didn't do the transfer or didn't remember or whatever it may be. But I will tell you, when I have an automated transfer, I've got one right now that goes from my bank account to a joint brokerage account with my wife and I. It is more work for me to go in and stop the transfer than just to let it happen and figure out how to make sure there's money there.
Totally.
So that friction, and that's Atomic Habits, right? He talks about making it easy, making it hard to do the things that you don't want to be habits of yours, and make it easy to do the things that you want to be habits of yours. And he's not one of these because he's not a finance author, but he's a systems author, right? And a habit author. But anyway, make it hard to stop the transfer. Make it easy to have it just happen automatically.
Totally. And one thing that comes to mind too is New Year's resolutions. I always set this long list of New Year's resolutions I want to do, but there's no system in place to achieve them.
Did you do it this year?
Yes, I try every year. And then the list is like 20 long and, it's go to the gym every day and eat healthy every day. But then I don't take any action to set up a system or a process I'm going to follow every day.
So Systems Girl doesn't have a system for your...
Exactly, for my personal life.
Okay. Okay. What are you going to do about it?
Make a system somehow. But then it's, what are we? Halfway through the month now, and I'm like, oh, I've already slacked on 3 of my goals that I was going to do for the new year. So, but if I was to have a system, it would be easy for me to follow those and achieve those.
Yeah, that's probably true. I find that like health, exercise, all of those systems, they do require, even if you have a system, they require a lot of like manual effort and willpower.
Totally.
However, money systems oftentimes don't. Which is so fantastic, right? The systems can be set up automatically. The transfers happen automatically. I have our trade team buy the investments for me in our portfolio once the cash hits. So I literally have to do nothing and other than make sure there's enough money sitting in the bank account for the transfer to happen, and it's all going to be taken care of for me automatically.
Totally.
So George Clason talks about that as well in Richest Man in Babylon, that the idea is that through disciplined rules and regular savings, controlled spending, the wealth creation by design, or surplus by design, and then regular investing, that's all going to work, and it's going to work really well. And that's all he taught all of that really before like this automation concept even existed. But that's 100 years ago. Okay, so these are the 7 habits. Let's recap them very quickly, and then if you have any extra thoughts that you want to throw out, and then I'll wrap us up. So spending to be seen prevents wealth. Drifting without a destination prevents direction. Fear-based decision-making prevents action. Optimizing the wrong levers prevents progress. Avoiding ownership prevents compounding. Excuse-based thinking prevents growth. And then lack of systems prevents consistency. Those are your 7 habits keeping you poor. And if you can solve these 7 and really adjust the way you think about money and the way you act because of the way you think. And in reality, let's take it a step further. What you believe about money is driving what you think about money. If you're having a hard time having positive thoughts about money, it's because you don't have the right beliefs about money. I would recommend doing a little bit of studying. Change your belief set. The right beliefs create the right thoughts. The right thoughts create the right actions. And the right system will help those actions be repeatable. So these are what we talked about. 5 different books. It's actually 6 since one of the books was written by 2 people. So 6 different authors, different eras, different audiences, yet they converge to the same conclusion. I'm going to give that to everybody. But before we do and before we wrap up, Avery, what else do you feel should be said?
Totally. I am just the biggest advocate for fixing these habits. If you have these habits, we have these authors that go back 100 years. And so when you have these people repeating these things over and over and over again, it just goes to prove the power behind stopping these habits and really being financially free and building wealth.
Right. Either they're really good and need to be repeated, or we as humans are really struggling to get
Yes.
it, right? Because it's the
Totally.
same thing being said for 100 years.
They're yelling at us.
Exactly. So that's what we talked about. They're screaming at us to fix these 7 habits. So the conclusion, people don't stay poor because they lack knowledge. They stay poor because of repeatable habits. And these 7 are the 7 habits where all these authors converge to say, this is what you got to fix. You got to fix this. And once you do, I think you will be shocked at how much progress you can make. And I'm talking to everybody out there, how much progress you can make on building real wealth, automating real wealth, protecting real wealth. And the very most important thing is translating that real wealth into your purpose, into what will drive happiness in your life. So this session has been kind of a one-off episode on the 7 habits keeping you poor. And I would love in the comments for you to comment in one way on one of these habits, something you have done to fix it, improve it, or something you can share with everybody else. I look at all of the comments and I try to make sure that we take note and we answer questions that come up. So comment there below. And again, a reminder, if you haven't subscribed to this, there is so much content on this channel, the Zacc Call Money Education channel. And you should subscribe, you should like, you should follow so that you don't miss any of it. And then again, I want to hear what you're doing to combat the 7 habits keeping people poor.